Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. For episode number 214, Alan and I were lucky enough to sit down in person with one of Alan's mentors and a very awesome podcast supporter, the one and only Dr. Robert Scott. He is an author 20 times. He has a PhD in cognitive psychology. Is that what you said?
Correct.
I didn't even know that was a thing. He was so knowledgeable. It was amazing. It blew me away, and we learned a lot.
Folks, I've known this man for quite some time, and he may very well be the most hyperconscious guest we've ever had. He knows a tremendous amount about the physical world. He knows a ton about knowledge. He also has a ton of experience, and he is very, very wise, because when you combine knowledge with experience, he's traveled the world several times. He worked as a CFO for a huge software company for a long time. He's authored 20-plus books. His new children's book is about to come out. He's done it all. He's been a father, husband, all of that. So I have the privilege of picking this man's brain consistently, and he helps guide me through some of the difficult parts of chasing your dreams. And so Kevin and I's intention with this episode is to ask him questions that we believe will help you on your journey, and we hope you will enjoy.
He's 69 years young and just getting started, and like Alan said, we hope you will enjoy.
Talk soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hyperconscious Podcast is proudly sponsored by our friend and mentor, David Meltzer of the Playbook Podcast. He was kind enough to join us on episode 144 and 135.
Folks, it has become Kevin and I's mission in life to help you realize that the life of your dreams is right on the other side of you becoming the greatest version of yourself. Let us help you do that.
I rarely do these things twice in such a short amount of time, but you guys impress me. I believe in people that provide value and of our service. You two guys are on your way to huge fulfillment, purpose, and profitability, and I'm looking forward to helping you both.
We appreciate that more than you know. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. Today, we have a guest in studio. This is one of Alan's mentors, and he has been listening for a while now. He gave me all the love. I'm so greatly appreciative of that. We are sitting down with the one and only Dr. Robert Scott. I am going to allow Alan to introduce you.
So how to introduce Dr. Robert Scott? So he's written 20 books. He has traveled the world several times. He used to work as a director of finance for a large software company back in the 80s and 90s.
CFO, yep.
You have a PhD in
clinical psychology.
Clinical psychology. You have 69 years worth of experience. Now, a lot of times we say, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. The listeners know that. One of the things that I have the privilege to do is, from week to week, I get to pick your brain, and you have a ton of knowledge, you have a ton of experience, and you've reflected on that knowledge and experience, and I consider you one of the wisest people I've personally ever met. So you're in for a treat, and here we go.
How scary. Keep going.
So the very first thing I want to ask you is, could you go briefly, I know you didn't want to talk about you because it's not about you, but can you go briefly into your story, high-level view? Who is Dr. Robert Scott, and why are you here?
I think, like most people, I had a vision of who I wanted to be from a very young age, and like many people, had obstacles that I needed to overcome. And slowly, and they say it takes a village, and I've had my mentors, and I've had people who basically helped me as I grew. Learn, do, grow. So the more we do, the more we learn, the more we grow. And slowly, I worked full-time since I was like 14 years old. When I went to college, I worked full-time. I got my bachelor's, my master's degree, my doctorate. I spent time studying at business school, law school. And I guess what makes my story kind of unique is concurrently I had so many different careers at the same time. I was in business, I was in academia, I was in politics, I was an author, I did a lot of stuff. And theologian, and because of that, I had many, many different communities that I actually engaged with all the time. Before people were global, I was very much into diversity and being able to embrace all the colorful tapestry that this country is, to be honest with you. And from all of these different sources, it really developed an eclectic kind of individual that just has a really wide swath of knowledge and really understands people. That's one of the things I take a lot of pride in, is a very high level of intuition and able to actually meet people where they are and give them encouragement to know that they can become everything they want to become.
That's an excellent introduction.
Right?
Yeah, really well done.
Yeah, I think that, so for the listeners, you have a level of, so ever since you got here, you've been here for like 15 minutes, I noticed immediately, I'm like, okay, this is going to be an awesome interview because you're living a life that you designed. And that's what Alan and I are trying to do. So the first question I have for you is, in your opinion, what do you think makes a good mentor? And what do you look for in a mentee? Because this conversation wouldn't be happening if you didn't see some potential in Alan or us or whatever it is. So what do you look for in a mentee, and what should our listeners look for and listen for when they're looking for a mentor?
I think the most important thing in anybody is being authentic. Being real. What you see is what's there, warts and all. No one's perfect except the divine one. And so for myself, I think in looking for a mentee, and fell in love with Alan because of the sincerity of who he is. He has, I think, it's funny, I said to an archbishop one time at a service I was doing that heaven is filled not with the souls of the perfect, but the souls of the sincere. And the sincerity is something that from that point there, I think you can meet people at a number of different levels. Because if you want to put that much honesty into everything you do, people see the passion. In training salespeople or people negotiating, whatever, I notice immediately that it's the things that people can't immediately rationally explain. It's the things that they intuitively feel. So when someone meets you, it's that energy, it's that click. And that comes from sincerity. So in looking for somebody who is going to really have potential, I look for the motivation of the heart in everything, because knowing what the person's heart is motivated, I can, with that other person, fix any challenge that they have. And I have.
What about for a mentor? So if I was looking for a mentor, how would you look the same way and say it's a matter of a heart and that, or what do you think makes a good mentor?
Good mentor is someone who is strikingly honest. In terms of just lifestyle, because see, again, you say I designed a lifestyle. It first of all comes with a vision, and from that vision, you have a kind of perspective. It's a mindset, and so that mindset then becomes your habits. And your habits then becomes your lifestyle, and the lifestyle becomes your day-to-day thing. And cumulatively, that, like a Swiss watch, cumulatively, drop by drop, the amount of cumulative good that you create then becomes your legacy. Your legacy is not something that you create in one day. So it's even the mundane thing you do consistently for 20 years. I've seen it in my work in politics. I've been elected 32 years. And I've seen it within my ecclesiastical role, academic role, business role. People, they just see how you consistently, and then a real strong measure of being humble. I think humility is an enormous thing overlooked in the society tremendously, because I think that the ability to have a very profound gift and then be just like a regular person. You know what I mean? As you said before, when we want to hear I don't want to talk about me. It's not about me.
Right.
It's and always in dealing with people, it's not about me. It's about you. I mean, and in doing that, I've been very successful with sales and negotiating and doing a lot of interpersonal things because so many people that we meet today. Well, I think the challenge in America today, they talk about race, they talk about different things. I think the great challenge in America today is all about elitism. I think that there's too many people that are statists. They separate themselves from other people. They put people in boxes. If we were more focused on, really trying to find the intention of someone's heart, I think people would be able to work together a lot better than they do today.
Super powerful. So I prepped a lot of questions. So I have the privilege, just for everyone listening, to pick Dr. Robert's brain weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, depending on how much he or myself is traveling. But that's kind of what this is we're trying to frame this as, okay, let's say you got to sit down with Dr. Robert Scott, 69 years of experience and knowledge combined into wisdom. Here we go. So in your book, Exceptional, it says that achievement/merit is created through an individual's investment of their time and resources. There's a specific quote in the book that I wanted to quote. In order to achieve something special, you must give up something of personal value or delay the enjoyment of things to a later time. Kevin and I talk about that a lot. My question for you is, you often talk about how the culture of exceptionalism used to be far more prominent in this country. Why is that, do you believe? And how do we get that back?
So Epictetus said that if you're going to be if you're seeking to achieve something great, you may have to delay something, or you may have to put something off or give something up completely. I think we go back to the whole creation of American exceptionalism, and we have a really interesting kind of melting together of the indigenous type of Yankee, history that we have, and then all of these people with all of their talents from all over the world that came here. This created this culture that was completely unique in the entire world. I think back in the day, people had a tremendous level of hope and there was an aspirational culture that being better was like the goal. I mean, being more educated, being more participatory. I think one of the things that's really, I go back to this product I developed, this New Century Performance product. I'm shocked when I talk to my children and hear that there's millennial employees that go to work and they have no interest in being better every single day. And I mean, so it's like, where have we failed these people to believe that life is about some kind of temporary experience? I mean, I think a lot of it comes from because of the smartphone, culture that we live in, this 20-second dopamine rush we need from just looking at the phone all the time. If I can't be instantly gratified, then it has no value to me. I look at the work that you've done with your own podcast, and I have to say that episode 200 sparkles even brighter than episode 30. I mean, and that is because, again, the 10,000-hour rule and all of the various things you gentlemen know. And so it's like, and again, a lot of people from your generation, and I worry about your generation, they just don't understand you have to put the work into it to get the results. I mean, and there's nothing easy, there's nothing instant. Everything is a matter of your persistence.
So you mentioned the 10,000-hour rule, and I guess now, and I can only speak to what I know because I've only been around for 30 years, but it seems like now personal development is becoming more mainstream with people like Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, these people. Tony Robbins has an Instagram, right? So I feel like it's becoming more mainstream, and we live by a certain set of fundamentals, fail forward, things like that. What are some of your personal development fundamentals that you live by every single day?
Keep paddling upstream. Keep paddling upstream. It doesn't matter. I mean, go back to what St. Augustine talked about. The righteous person falls 7 times and gets up 7 times, or gets up 7 times 70. I mean, so it's not a matter of falling, it's the getting up all the time. we're going to make mistakes. I mean, and I find people who want to live in the safe zone and never make any mistakes, well, then they're not probably producing anything of value. Because, I mean, the person who's going to risk it is a person who's going to make errors. But we also need to be conducive to allowing those people to make errors, know that's a part of improvement. I mean, and this is exactly one of the challenges I think I see today.
So I was at dinner recently with a dear friend and mentee of mine, and I asked her, I said, what do you think is the most rare, if you could break it down to one word, what do you believe is the most rare character trait in America? And I said, I only speak to America because that's where I spend most of my time traveling. And she thought for a long time, and she came up with an answer that I thought was fascinating, even though it wasn't the answer that I think. She said hope. And I thought that was really kind of depressing a little bit, because if you don't have hope for your own brighter future, then today is going to have less value, and you're less likely to invest today for a brighter tomorrow. So I want your take on, you mentioned hope earlier. I want your take on why you think we've lost some hope and some excitement for the future in our culture specifically. And then number two, I think the rarest thing from my perception, I'm just going to say it is what it is. I think self-discipline.
I was going to say the same.
Is the rarest quality in a human being today. Rarest. It's very hard to not want to do it and do it anyway, because it's for what's best, for a greater end state. So, and I think they're connected. If you don't have hope, why would you have self-discipline? Because you're not trying to create that brighter future. What's your take on that?
So I go back to these people, these immigrants that came in the beginning of the 20th century. They saw forward motion. So in seeing forward motion, they had hope that it was aspirational, that all the boats were rising in the tide. And that came from getting up every day, putting your pants on, going to work, being disciplined. And what do you call it? In this here, they knew that they were climbing the ladder. Somewhere along the line, it has gotten disconnected so that people have this tremendous sense of entitlement. This entitlement has short-circuited a natural progression in people's mindsets. And what's happened now is these people want everything to, someone graduates from college. They want to be the president of the bank. Well, it doesn't work that way. You just don't become the president of the bank.
Right.
And because of that, they have a great sense of disappointment. Their expectation of what they hope for has never been what it was prior. So because they have such an unrealistic expectation of what they're going to be able to achieve, they're disappointed, and then they give up. I mean, so like your story with you two gentlemen is that you're very much the image of old school people like myself, because you guys are self-made. I mean, so and being self-made means that there's lots of self-sacrifice and denying oneself. I mean, and these things all take a vision of what you are. It's today in the 21st century, I think there's the greatest currency today in the 21st century is time, in the effective use of time. How do you use your time? Do you use your time well? I mean, and if you use your time well, you will continue to aspire. The other one is creativity. I not to, put a whole group of people, and just judge them. But then most of the younger people I meet, I think they've lost that free space for creativity. I mean, and creativity is probably one of the most valuable commodities today. So the use of your time and creatively, look where I am, producing something like that. So I go back to all the books that we wrote that became my portfolio. I mean, and I said to Alan one time at dinner, I said, Kevin, in your podcast, that's your portfolio now. So that sets you apart immediately. So I mean that basically is your portfolio of work. I mean, and that makes you, it gives you a certain persona.
We were talking in the preamble about, so you said, I'm sure that event that you guys had this weekend in Florida shook some things loose, and it did for us for sure, but we both had clients there. And one of my clients messaged me last night and said that her family and her friends were basically calling her crazy and saying, you shouldn't be spending time with people who think they're better than everybody else. Why are you wasting your time going to these events? It's not going to change anything. And I got super fired up earlier because that's exactly what somebody who wants to change their life needs. I don't think I'm better than anybody. I just think I want better for myself. And if I want better for myself, I want better for you. What would you say to that person who doesn't have an awesome mentor like you? They don't have people in their life that believe in them necessarily, or they're not on the same journey. So they're very by themselves until they get in a room with Alan or myself, or they get in a call with Alan or myself. What would you say to them?
The runner at the head of the race only looks to the right or the left and never looks behind them. So if you really are self-determined, a lot of things are noise today. I meet people who want to, constantly be negative. I don't live there. I mean, so like for them, the fact that they went down to Florida and did all that, and why are these other people judging them? I mean, we're not here to judge anybody. I mean, and they should take care of their own business, and these people being able to work through this here. If a friend is not happy for your success, then they're maybe not your friend, and maybe you need to choose other friends, to be honest with you. And I hope that doesn't sound harsh, but I think in many ways, we're known by the company we keep.
Super powerful answers. I'm enjoying this a lot because I've heard a lot of this.
Yeah, and it's
but
not harsh either. It's
right. It's
going back to self-sacrifice. I've given up a lot of people that it wasn't my goal to not be friends with them, but I knew you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If I spent time with you guys like this every day, I would be far more successful than if, you were somebody who was drinking and you were somebody who was into partying. It is that cut and dry a lot of times, but I think it's hard to make that sacrifice. And, that's basically what I told her. If they don't want what you want, they're not going to understand.
But also it's a field of energy. I have many people who will come and see me and they'll talk to me and they say, oh my God, I felt you for 2 days after you were gone and blah, blah, blah. And I was in your space and blah, blah, blah. And that space is created again through very predictable behaviors that are very consistent. And sometimes I'll do something, I'll say to my children or, somebody I work with, it's like, I know I'm very predictable. I mean, but that consistency and that dependability, it really gives people a tremendous sense of security and confidence and trust in you. I mean, and so I've had many times, I remember once when I was in the legislature, the governor calling me up and saying I needed an honest answer from somebody, and he asked me a question about something. And I told him the idea was an awful idea. And I said it was awful because of this and this and this and this and this. And he says, every one of my advisors told me it was great. I knew you'd give me the right answer. I mean, and to be able to have someone like that in your corner, that's invaluable.
Anthony Truck said that on the last episode we recorded with a guest. He said, I think the truest form of love is telling someone the truth that their heart's not ready to hear yet.
Yeah.
When I reviewed the last episode, I thought that was fascinating. I thought back to some of my mentors who support me, believe in me so much that they want to help me. And at the end of the day, you need to be a student, not a follower. You have to do what's in your heart, but you have to allow your mentors and coaches to shake the snow globe. One thing I wanted to segue into this next question is this. So I tell the listeners all the time, one of the biggest mistakes I believe that we make is thinking super short term. We're chasing pleasure in the moment at the expense of something far greater: fulfillment, service, discipline, sacrifice, due diligence, all that stuff. You've been on this earth long enough to understand the value of long-term habits that create better long-term because you've been here longer. Whereas a high school kid, I spoke to a group of high school athletes, they don't know the value of a decade because they've never invested one. So one of the best parts about mentors is they can look back and go, imagine what I could have done. And it's just such a unique perspective. So I wanted to reframe this episode for everyone listening. Remember don't be arrogant enough to believe that you can't learn something here. You absolutely can, because this person's been on this earth for more than twice the amount that Kevin and I have, and he's been into personal development and psychology since, your mid-20s.
But let me say this. I mean, I'm in the supermarket the other day, and there's this gentleman there putting something on the shelf, and I ask him a question about something. And 2 seconds into the conversation, he gave me a pearl. That was my pearl for the whole day. You can learn from anybody. If you're open, so for me, I'm not a statist. I'm not an elitist. So for me, I believe I can learn wisdom from anybody that I encounter. And because of that, I accumulate it all the time from the least likely sources. I mean, and the pearls are They're the best ones.
What
too.
was the pearl? Do you mind if I ask?
I don't remember.
Oh. All right, so here's the next question. Einstein once said, and this is in your book, you have to learn the rules of the game and then play them better than anyone else. One of the reasons why we do this podcast is to find what we call the cheat codes, basically how to learn the rules of the game, learn how it's set up, nature, the universe, so that we can win on our own game and design our own life. So that's a quote from your book, and that's our goal for the listeners, understanding the why behind everything so that they can design their how. For the listeners, with 69 years of life experience and world travel, if they were your mentees, what can you tell them that will help them create a wonderful, self-actualized life on their own terms?
Be yourself. And be yourself. And see, I think life really has like 3 different phases to it. First phase in life is all about self-discovery. And self-discovery creates this whole level of self-knowledge. And this comes from a kind of an intuitive inner wisdom that we have, and that creates a collective intelligence with the people that you surround yourself with. So, number 1, surround yourself with this collective intelligence. That becomes your wisdom team. I talk about the wisdom team all the time. Then from that wisdom team, you create this vision. The vision then is perfected. I talk about the people in Antwerp who polish the diamonds on the diamond wheels. So they take the little diamonds and they do all the facets and everything. It takes time to do that. Once you really kind of figure out what your vision is, you need to just have what you call a success recipe. I go back to these Greek guys who own this pizza place there, and they came here in 1970 to New Hampshire, and 50 years later, I think their collective family probably has a couple of hundred stores throughout the state there. And they talk about the signature experience. So when you go to their pizza place, let's say you order pizza with peppers on it, green peppers. For them, if the case of peppers are $25 or in the winter $125, they use the same peppers all the time. So in dealing with people in terms of your attributes, your talents, your abilities, bring your best game all the time. Don't have, you're going to have your off day. I think what people are looking for today are people who they can depend upon, people who bring something to collaborate with people, the ability to really be effective. I mean, and I think insignificant. I think this is what people are looking for today. I mean, and as a mentee, do something unique. I mean, everybody is given a unique gift the day they're born. And it is our obligation, it is our duty to fulfill the fruition of that gift that's been given to every single person. I mean, and it's not an option. I mean, and it's funny, we go back to something like grace or something, which, I'm not going to have like a revival meeting here or something. But in the next breath, grace is given in a portion to people. And the more you use the grace, the more it proliferates and the greater your gift becomes.
Right.
And that wisdom, wisdom is very expansive. Unity is very expansive. Light is very expansive. And just a little bit of light can confront darkness and ignorance so well because it can't overcome the frequency of the energy that it possesses. Einstein also said that that you just need to align the energy to the objective that you seek to achieve. This is not philosophy, he said. This is just basic science. So in traveling at that level there and being able to project out that type of energy, you're going to attract these things from the universe to you all the time. I mean, the outside presentation is really good. The wrapper is good. And I talk about the candy bar. So basically with the candy bar, it's like I meet some people, they're really big into the wrapper, and yet they have no candy bar inside the wrapper at all. So, I mean, you have to have this kind of essence we talk about. So like we talk about the whole idea of energy and essence. So your essence is really the true you that people will feel, and that's why the authentic piece is just such a huge thing if you really seek to aspire. I think people see this and they feel it, and you'll have people that will dislike you because of it too, because it's very powerful.
Can you describe for our listeners what aspire is?
Aspire means to improve. Aspiration is the whole idea that, every day, well, we'll go back to this thing. So let's say I cut my hand. and my hand will bleed, and I'll put a little Band-Aid on it. What will my hand do? Well, 700 generations of my DNA have programmed my body to improve itself every single day. So my body will work and work and work to make sure that thing becomes back to where it was before. By our actual design, by our own biochemistry, we are designed to be improving all the time. To the day we die, our body is continuing to try to proliferate the life inside of it there. So anybody that tells me that they're not into improving themselves, it's antithetical to the actual nature of their body, the way they were created, to be honest with you. And this is not philosophy, this is science.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you are enjoying this episode where Alan and I were lucky enough to sit down in person with the one and only Dr. Robert Scott. If you have not joined Hyperconscious Nation, let me ask you a question. What is it that you're waiting for? Because if you want to become the best, most capable, most confident, most hyperconscious version of yourself, getting around and masterminding with people who are doing the same is unbelievably important. The people that came to your world within live met a bunch of people that they're going to be masterminding with, and now they realize I can have these people in my life consistently, and my life will reflect those relationships. So head on over to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com, click join, #HyperconsciousNation, and you will be part of our private Facebook group.
Join us over there. So, Dr. Robert Scott is a prolific author who has written over 20 books, about to have his 21st come out, but this book in particular, exceptional. For those of you out there know my 3 words, exceptional, enthusiastic, and caring. Number 1 is exceptional. This book is phenomenal. Let me do a quick dramatic reading from this book. Here we go. The path less traveled is more solitary and is one in which your good thoughts most surely become your best friends. To be exceptional is to live a good, ordinary life in which, through your passionate embrace and diligent commitment to excellent quality, you rise and achieve many extraordinary things. This is not for everyone, and requires a constant commitment to self-sacrifice, which, as time progresses, eventually becomes your lifestyle. Then it becomes your personal culture, and finally, your legacy of achievement and your body of work. Of the 5 million moments on this planet, once you find your truth and formulate your own success recipe, system of success, some might say.
Some must say.
Everything else falls into place. The key thing is to keep on paddling upstream, never stopping. Naturally, there will be some rough currents, rocks to avoid, dips in the water, and even some unexpected dunkings into the fast, raging stream. Just stay on course. Let your intuition be your compass. Every journey begins with a sincere first footstep. Never lose the zeal and good feeling of that moment when you saw your first footprint in the sands of life. It is not the intellect that creates exceptional anything, but the spirit. If you remain honest to its truth, it will take you so very far in life. Never lose sight of your creative imagination, for it is the place of dreams and the dreamers that brought the first light into this world. Each of us is a miracle, conceived in a moment of great love, and our most expressive task is to bring, share, and grow that love into the world. All of the powers from above surround you and are daily working for your benefit. With this little bit of new knowledge in your pocket, make a change. Do some good. The world awaits the perfection of your exceptional talent, that with some sincere effort, like the frozen seeds in the cold winter earth, will awaken to blossom into the beautiful flowers of spring.
Speaking of spring, let's spring back into the episode.
Let's do that.
Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Have you seen a big difference? So Alan and I have done interviews with people who have a great candy wrapper, but the inside of them is just air.
And never saw the light of day.
And it never saw the light of day. But we've also, turned down guests doing research. Have you noticed a difference? Because, again, you've been around longer than we have. You've seen more examples of somebody show up and walk their talk versus somebody show up, have a good sale, have a good pitch, and not be that. Have you noticed a difference over the last 10 to 15 years in that?
Well, I suffer fools poorly. I mean, in dealing with people who are like shallow or, superficial, I don't have the time, to be honest with you, in dealing with these people. And before I'd be kind of directive or confrontive. Now, I have time for people like Alan. I have no time for these people. And I tell them that if they're wearing a mask, it really takes a lot of energy to hold that mask up all the time. It just takes so much energy.
Right.
I mean, and when mask falls, you're done. I mean, and I see today, a culture that says, do it quickly, do it fast, you can make it, the millionaire's mindset, all that. This is all nonsense. I mean, anybody who seeks to aspire has a long-term vision. They work at it consistently. They've given up something to get where they're going to go. And at first, what did Gandhi say? Gandhi said, first they ignore you, next they laugh at you, then you win. I mean, so it's like in so many places when you really think you're at the point where you're not doing well, you may be right at the sunrise of the aspiration of your dreams.
That's powerful because that just happened to us.
Yeah, we've been dealing with a lot, but we just gotta keep on going and grinding. Breakthrough?
Yeah. So when you are at what appears to be your biggest challenge, that's when you're right near the success. A lot of times.
The darkest hour is before the dawn.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just experienced that not long ago.
I mean, again, myself, having grown up in a really very spiritual type of environment, everything is about spirit. I mean, and it's how you call that to you. I mean, and it doesn't have to be an organized religious type of way. I mean, it just has to be something that really involves understanding that, we're more than just this, this candy wrapper. I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, and by being able to see ourselves in that extended dimension there, it puts challenges into a completely different direction, to be honest with you. That's what it does.
Perspective.
It does. Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you, so I've often said this, and I'm fortunate enough at this point. It blows my mind that I didn't seek out guidance and mentors for such a long time. I think I've always had them, but I wasn't as proactive as I wish I should. In hindsight, there was definitely some great mentors in my life early on. But I got really proactive basically 2 years ago. From my mentors that I've talked to that are older. So very successful, very wealthy, almost all of them came from nothing. Unbelievable adversity and not coming from a place of entitlement at all. Grew up usually very poor. Oftentimes, you're not one of the only mentors who grew up discriminated. I say there's two master skills to life. Number one, increasing your own value. That is personal development. That's doing the work. That's what are you doing when no one's watching. That's character. That's discipline. That's self-sacrifice. The second one is making sure the correct people are able to perceive that value. And that's the service part. So what I want to say to the listeners is this. People like Dr. Robert Scott are the employers a lot of the time. For the listeners, as an employer, what would you look for in an employee so that people out there who are listening have a better chance of showcasing the attributes that can help them get jobs and chase their dreams?
I think everything really, the hotter the fire, the better the steel. I mean, so these gentlemen and women who basically came through a lot of adversity, what it did for them was it really honed their skills. I mean, I think everything really comes down to preparation, presentation, and performance. So before you go to that interview there, make sure you're prepared for it there. You know something about the company. You know what you're going to be able to speak about there. So you have that. And not three quick, clever questions or whatever. I mean, something that's really sincere that you really want to know about. Not how you're going to, glad hand and, trick the interviewer into thinking you're a great guy or great gal, whatever. And then the actual performance itself. When you're there, be in the moment. I mean, put your phone in the car. I mean, the last thing, I went to an event once where I was making a presentation, and these guys from Sweden, they took their phone out about 10 minutes into my presentation because I was at a friend's company there. I didn't call them out because if I wasn't there, I would have called them out in front of 50 people right there because that's just bad behavior, to be honest with you. I mean, people are looking for people who definitely are going to be able to be able to fit into the organizational culture. It's not just the skill sets, it's the ability to work with other people. You know what I'm saying? So preparation, the actual presentation and performance. I need to know that I can depend on you when I'm not even watching you. I mean, and these skills come through. It's funny, we talk about in this New Century Performance product that we developed 4 critical mindsets. The talent mindset, are you analytical? Are you deductive? Are you empathic? Are you creative? We talk about an integrity mindset that's just really quite amazing. I mean, one of the questions is if you've seen someone drop a wallet, what would you do? And we use this in the HR context. We have people actually say that they would wait and pick up the wallet and stick it in their pocket. It's quite amazing. I mean, so, be someone of character and know what your talent is. Relationships. I mean, the relationship mindset. We talk about champion leaders, tribal leaders, samurais, underdogs. Are you win-win? Are you win-win for just a small group? Are you a champion leader win-win for everybody? Are you win-lose? Or are you just lose-lose? People sense that too. One of the other things, I work with this Dr. Joy Allen in Atlanta, and she says, well, that's really great, Robert, but let's say I have the right relationship mindset, integrity mindset, and talent mindset. I have a very bad learning mindset. So we developed this test called Jigsaw. Jigsaw is a 15-question test, and out of Jigsaw, are you able to readily learn new skills and new information? The world we live in today, it's about constant acquisition of information and the integration of it and the ability to be able to applicably use that to deal with customers, whatever. I mean, so I think it's a whole basket of things you need to bring to the presentation when you go there. The most important thing is, if you forget everything I said, is the preparation before you actually get there. I mean, and that there is a very big part of the thing before you even step foot in the door.
I notice you're always super prepared, even for meetings with me. You always bring a certain thing to present. Even before sitting down in the preamble, Dr. Robert, with Kevin, when I went to the bathroom, pulled out 3 books and started showcasing different things. He's always prepared. He's always on time. This is the first time, actually, I've ever seen you not on time. So I was telling Kevin I'm worried about him.
Yeah, I said I hope everything's all right.
Well, you live in the pucker brush here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, in your defense.
I was going to bring a helicopter or something. My God. It's the middle of nowhere.
We are in the woods.
We are in the woods. So we talked a little bit about overcoming obstacles, overcoming past. That's something that Alan and I have had to do in order to get where we are today. In your estimation, what do you think the difference between somebody overcoming their obstacles and really turning into the best versions of themselves and somebody using those obstacles as an anchor to hold them back for the rest of their lives? One of my good friends said to me, you have every reason in the world to be a piece of crap, and you're not. You're one of the nicest people I've ever met. And for me, it wasn't an option. I had to be this way. But I know a lot of people don't have that same feeling necessarily. So how do you really turn your past and the pain into like a life of your dreams, into whatever your unique gift to the world might be?
I think it's the way you really look at life. I think we can either, as I say, bitter or better. I mean, so you meet people, and unfortunately one of the things that's happened in this country is that people want to use their oppression or something and use that as a causality that, I'm not good because I'm this or because I'm that. No, we're all judged individually by our abilities. I mean, so, and in making excuses, we're really great at making excuses too. So there's no excuses. I mean, and so many people use that as a crutch. I mean, and you need to clean the slate, and you need to be able to say that today's a new day. I'm going to be able to do that. And, especially if you came from some difficult circumstance and then you aspired and you did well, you look back at that there and, I think Khalil Gibran says in his book, The Prophet, he talks about learning silence from the talkative and patience from the impatient and kindness from the unkind. He said, I should not be ungrateful to such good teachers. I mean, so you know what you don't want to be.
Right.
So in knowing what you don't want to be, as talking to many people that I've mentored, I'll talk to their parents or something, and I'll tell their mom or something. Well, one thing good about him is that he knows what he doesn't want. So if you know what you don't want, there's a good likelihood that you'll eventually figure out what you do want, to be honest with you.
Can I have a follow-up?
Please.
So we've talked to a lot of people. I think Lori Harder, was it Lori Harder that said it's better to have a bunch of 80% days or 60% days than have a 100% day and then a 0% like after it?
She was also saying that having a 60% well-designed day is better than a 100% no-design
Right,
day.
right. So for you, looking back, did you have a bunch of 100% days where I got everything done I needed to today, I laid my head down and I feel amazing? Or did you have 60% days where you got a lot of important things done, maybe the important leverage points? Like, what would you say to somebody like me who I'm trying to have a 100% day every day? And then sometimes I have a 0% day because I crash.
So a kind of Alan Robert kind of thing is every day I get up and make a list. And I make my list and I prioritize my list. And in my case, I don't go to bed until my list is done.
Interesting.
So I just go and go and go. And if I look at my life, I mean, if I could really describe it, all I would hear the sound of is whoosh, just like whoosh. I mean, always body in motion stays in motion. The body at rest stays at rest.
Newton.
I mean, just constantly going all the time. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of it is I don't look at it in terms of percentages or whatever. Someone says you get stuff done. I mean, and that's what I do every day. And but I have a long-term vision that I'm constantly moving towards. I mean, I really want it badly. I mean, someone 30-ish in my kind of space that could digitize my information, because like my greatest fear was that all of this content that's 30 or 40 years worth of work would end up in some box and just not used. So every time I watch your podcast, I hear words and stuff that we talk about. This is extremely gratifying. I mean, because I know that the wisdom that, for me, nothing is more enjoyable than to take the benefit of all my sacrifice and hard work and see someone else not having to suffer or, have a challenge because something that we were able to do. And you people do that all the time. That's a very great blessing.
One of the questions that I want to ask you is, I've noticed that not everyone is ambitious. Not everyone is focused on legacy. You mentioned legacy earlier. And not everyone has a clear vision for their future. And the people that don't, I find it really difficult to get them to maybe do things that suck in the moment that are clearly for the better, not only of themselves, but others. Why do you think more people don't have a vision like you just described? So I'm someone who's in your vision. And just to provide context, at Your World Within Live 2019, I literally told the audience, I have a mentor who's 69 years old who is more excited for the future than people my age. If you're around people who are not excited for the future, it is going to rub off on you. Be careful. So for you, your excitement, you never stop going, the whoosh thing you just said, why do you think some people don't have that vision?
So I had a parishioner in my parish. She was 111 years old and lived in her house until she was 111, took no medicine, drove her car until she was 100 years old, had 9 children. They all lived until she was still 111 years old. Every single one of her children were super successful. Every one of her grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And this all came from the whole idea that we're going to be here a long time. I mean, it's not like we're doing short-term things. I think for so many people, unfortunately, the chasing of pleasure has really destroyed their ability to be substantive as individuals. So it's and the problem with pleasure is that it doesn't last very long.
Substantive?
Well, instead of being like a critical thinker or something, so everything, I'll deal with some people. I'll go to a convention or something. I meet certain people who are just like glad hands, and they're always yucking it up and everything. They're exhausting. I mean, in dealing with them because they're just so shallow. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and for them, they never really truly know who they are as a person, and so they're very good at short-term goals. But in terms of getting something done that's bigger, it's beyond their ability to put their arms around it. So because everything's about the next meal or the next drink or the next cigarette or hemp or whatever they do,
right.
I mean, they have no ability to see that, what do you call it? Oh, It's episode 500. What do you call it? It's our 3 books we wrote. Oh, yeah, we spoke in Shanghai in 2026. I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, and so like in terms of people talking about age, I think of the gentleman that plowed my driveway up in my New Hampshire house here, and my wife says he died. I said, what do you mean? He was plowing the driveway. She goes, Robin, he's 92 years old. I said, what do you mean? And I said, and for me, life is this vast blue sky, and we have to continue to embrace it and continue to be optimistic. And as an elder, people are looking to my energy and my direction, and I owe this to the people who came before me and sacrificed for me and helped me. I'm just doing my piece of what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's why I actually even came here tonight, because it was important for me to do this for you and for you guys.
Well, we appreciate you, for
Yeah,
sure.
thank you.
Do you think you can learn ambition? Is ambition something you can learn? Grit, is that something you can learn?
It's a really great question. I it's funny. I remember one time with somebody I was mentoring, and I went up to see him. He was working at some estate. He was cutting some guy's lawn and everything, and he starts drinking a can of that, what's that awful stuff that they drink? Red Bull. What do you call it? And And he said, oh, my God, I'm drinking this Red Bull. I said, oh, let me tell you, honey, if you think there's ambition in that can, you're going to be very disappointed. Let me tell you, I said, because if you don't have that inside of you, I mean, no can is going to give you that ambition.
Where does that come from? Let's contemplate. And by the way, just so everyone knows, this mic is a travesty. It keeps moving on me.
The problem
Why does it keep
is,
moving?
it's not moving.
This thing keeps going like this.
It's loose. You got to tighten it. Just leave it like that.
It'll go back. Watch.
Just put it that way and slide it over more.
Well, then I have to do this.
Slide the whole thing.
Oh. Well, then I can't look at Dr. Robert. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. I apologize,
Travesty.
everyone.
It's okay.
It
So,
will go back. Let's go.
I think, today we hear a lot about privilege. People use that in racial terms and privilege. Privilege has given people a feeling that, what do you call it, they're entitled to something. They're supposed to get something. And I mean, and unfortunately, I think it clouds their ability to think big, and really be able to understand that. I do this with my children all the time. I have a daughter who's a biochemical molecular scientist, a venture capitalist at a biopharma, and she is probably one of the most ambitious people I've ever met. She's constantly disappointed in her peer group. She's like 33, 34 years old. I mean, constantly disappointed in her peer group. I mean, and it's because she's not going to settle. I mean, and for her, and yet to meet her, she's very down to earth and everything else. A lot of people, they weren't brought up with it. Their parents didn't model it to them. The people around them didn't model it to them. It comes back to even like a corporation. I mean, a corporation, the organizational culture in a corporation. I mean, are we modeling training and learning and training that are going to continue to improve the human capital in our organization? I mean, if that's something that's not being taught, it's not being reinforced, can't grow a plant without water and without seeds and without dirt. If you don't have that, you don't have any ambition at all. I mean, and you can't force it on people too. I mean, and I've done this for years, mentoring certain people and have these wonderful intellectual debates with my wife. And she goes, well, it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. You have to be hungry and you have to really want it. I think of a young man I mentored, a single-parent family. I saw him every day for 2 years. What do you call it? He works as a bond trader, and he's the top of his game. I mean, and this is because you got to want it.
Right.
You got to want it badly too.
You got to want it badly. Okay, so let's do this. You've mentored tons of people.
A lot.
One of the things that I found most fascinating about you was how well you mentor, because you've done it so much. Whereas some of my mentors have never really had a mentee who was humble enough to want to learn. I am so eager to learn that which I don't know. Sometimes my biggest struggle is not knowing what I don't know. But
excuse me, didn't Aristotle say that was the beginning of wisdom?
yeah,
He was
knowing that you don't know.
The thing with Socrates says, "I'm the wisest man because I know nothing." He said,
which is interesting. Can we explain that to the listeners? Like,
Well, you meet certain people. I meet certain people who are just like, oh, they're so exhausting. I mean, and they think they know like everything, and they don't know anything at all. And because they have like a little bit of knowledge, they are in their own way all the time. Then I meet some people. I think of a young man I mentored who is an expert on the F-35 fighter. He's only 25 years old. He works for the Department of Defense, comes from a small rural town in New Hampshire. And his level of, and his thirst for knowledge and his humility makes him one of the smartest young people that I've ever met in my whole life. I mean, and other people, I think of some young seminarian I was serving with and doing some service with him or something. And he said, well, let me do this because you probably don't really remember this anymore, he says to me. And what I call it. And I let him do it, and he didn't do it correctly. And at the end of it, I said, you need to kind of continue to work on that there. And then I repeated what he did, and he says, wow, you still remembered how to do that, he said to me. It's a misperception of your persona and your effectiveness. I mean, ultimately, everything comes down to how effective you are. I mean, so even with this hyper-conscious podcast, what do you call it? How effective are your people? Obviously, you're very effective because your audience continues to grow. You continue to do better in your own coaching work there. And I can tell by your just persona, it's bright. You're very effective. You're very significant.
Thank you.
It goes back to humility, really, because there's probably people that try to tell you how to run a business. In your past, I'm sure somebody said, hey, you should try it this way. But when they try it, that's what we always say. If you're not getting feedback along the way, you might think you know how to have a better podcast. And maybe you do. But I know a lot because I failed a lot. I know what questions not to ask because I've tried to ask them and I failed. Or, certain ways to upload episodes. So I think taking action is the most important thing. And I believe that now more than ever. And I think a lot of people who aren't taking action are going to say, Dr. Robert, you should do it this way because this is the result you'll get.
Right.
And that's something we deal with a lot too.
We have kind of a Greek saying I like a lot. It's one thing to watch people dancing and another thing to be dancing yourself. I mean, so it's like it's easy to sit there from the outside, but, life is a participatory sport. I mean, so the more we do, the more we are involved. See, I think one of the things that's happened in American society today that's very, very unfortunate is we become much too tribal. We're closing ourselves off from other people. We're becoming kind of ignorant. I mean, in the sense that we don't want to hear perspectives of people who we don't agree with. And I think that limits us. I mean, versus myself, I want to hear from everybody because something? Like you go to a town meeting in New England and you get up and you would say, we're going to agree to disagree without being disagreeable. I mean, because Kevin, I'm going to probably learn something from you, even if I disagree with you. And the another 90% of the things we agree on are far more significant than the 10% that we don't agree on at all.
That's something I've heard you say many times. We're going to agree to disagree, but not be disagreeable. For me, that's like normal.
Yeah.
Like I've learned that for a long time with you, but that's probably the first time you've heard that.
Yeah, for me, it's like, it used to be a lot harder for me to learn from people who I didn't quote unquote like.
Right.
But now I'm getting far better at staying in discomfort and saying, I don't have to accept and adopt everything, but let me stay here because you're better at something than I am. You're better at something than I am. Joe Schmo is better at something than I am. So that's been something that I've really been working on, not judging. Maybe you're not anything like me, but you definitely know something I don't. That's been something I've been really working on.
And that's huge. I mean, I think a lot of people that I meet younger, again, it's very comfortable to put people in boxes. I mean, I find a lot of rich people I deal with do that all the time. And I think you go to the yacht club or something, you meet these people, and they're very reductionistic in their thinking. That's like, yep, the wrong shoes. Yep. And
Reductionistic? Can you please explain that? By the way, just so the listeners know, my vocabulary has come up a lot because of a couple people. He's one of them. Kimberly Spencer, also next level vocabulary.
Yes.
But also because I interrupt because I want to understand what you're talking about. And I don't.
So what that means is instead of being expansive in the way you think, it means that basically, I see the tattoo, I see this, I see that.
Right.
And all of a sudden I label you.
Yeah.
And I safely put you away because that makes me feel better about me. But meanwhile, I might have had the possibility to have an amazing pearl from Kevin, and
Right.
and now I passed up an opportunity to improve myself. And that's why we become cloistered being closed. I mean, and that's what's happened. I mean, that's why people who want to really be a standout comes from being able to work with all different types of people you don't agree with, people you do agree with, older, multi-generational people. I mean, this is where we really were able to be, again, back effective and significant.
What I've told the listeners many times is that sometimes it's the people who make you feel uncomfortable that you can learn the most from. We talk about the PMES system: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. I know you have your own framework, and it's funny because he thinks that he's like, Alan, I hear you on the podcast and you talk about these things like that you've realized them, even though they've been in psychological studies for yeah.
I love this. So Alan, he goes, when I was talking about, oh yeah. I think it was the eidetic imagery gentleman there, Bedish, I think it was in 1920 he came up with that.
Right.
And he goes, really? I said, no, but it's okay. All truth is kind of circular. It comes back.
Right.
And you're just...
I came up with it, though. No.
It's all good. I said, don't worry about it.
So we talk about E's and M's.
The final two
questions?
Yeah,
okay, perfect.
after
This is a good segue. Good last question. We talk about E's and M's. So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. If you're more emotional, you tend to go more by your feeling, and if you dislike someone, you're far less likely to learn from them. Whereas if you're more mental, you really care more about what you can learn and their results. If you're E, M's make you a little bit uncomfortable, so you're less likely to learn from them. You'll usually leave those rooms, but that's exactly who you need to be around because they're going to shake the snow globe. M's maybe will make E's uncomfortable, so they'll leave the room because they feel like they're disliked. I've been there many times. So it's the liking and disliking bias, right? If you dislike someone, you're far less likely to learn from them. But if you like someone, you're going to learn things that may not be accurate. So Jim Rohn says you can be sincere, but sincerely wrong. What advice can you give to our listeners when it comes to learning from the right people and then staying discerning about who you learn from?
Oh, that's kind of heavy, I think a lot of it is, again, being open-minded and understanding that we are a totality of many different sources of energy from many different places there. And, it's kind of funny. So we have this gift that was given to us the day we were kind of born, and those are the natural talents we have. And then we have this growth, the stuff that we need to become better at. We can't become better at that unless we integrate the multitude of opinions from other people to get there. There was a whole level of being self-made, but no one ever became successful by themselves. So that the very person you think is like very, very harsh or whatever, I mean, my wife has been a tremendous support through all these years, but my harshest critic. I'll say to my children, she actually complimented me about something. So I did really, really good. But again, in her level of perception is just so acute, and her honesty, her concern for me, and her ability to polish that diamond more, it only shines brighter. I mean, and it's sometimes I tell people all the time. My friends tell me no. My friends tell me things I don't want to hear. My friends are the people who will say, it was awful. I mean, and I know that I need to do better. I mean, but if I have an amen corner of people that just tell me all the time, oh my God, you're the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, you don't need those people. It's nice. It feels good. It's warm. It's fuzzy and everything. Sometimes the cold, prickly people, they serve a purpose.
They serve a purpose.
We've been cold and prickly to each other for sure.
Yeah.
And it's definitely made us.
But we appreciate it, though.
Yeah, and it's accepted. I always want you to come to me with the truth, because if you don't, then I can't operate. I'm operating on a false narrative.
Everyone said my speech at Confident Women's Consortium was incredible.
Except for
Evan
me.
was the one person who said, dude, like, I was
Do
doing
better.
Yeah, do better. Right.
Do
So,
better.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely. So
It was fire speech.
it was good. It'll be better next time.
Exactly.
You have had a longer time on this earth than Alan and myself. You've had more time to hone and get very clear and specific on your goals, your passions, your purpose. What do you hope to accomplish before you leave this earth behind?
Well, that'll be another 30 years from now, probably.
I
at
hope.
least.
I hope it's
Yes.
another 50.
A long time. I want to take this level of intellectual property content that I've developed. I want to pass it forward so that it becomes a vehicle to help people improve the quality of their life. And that will be my contribution. Everybody brings a certain gift. And I know that in the fruition of my gift, I was able to fulfill the destiny of my life. Very significant, very heavy.
So the last thing I want to say here is thank you for coming on the show. And you know I tell you this all the time, but I wouldn't be as polished as I am without you, Dr. Robert. You have been an unbelievable, wise guide in my life, and I appreciate you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I'm glad that you now could provide that to the listeners.
This was awesome. Thank you very much.
I've learned so much just through absorption from Alan when he comes and says we had this breakthrough, and so I have to thank you as well. And I want to help in any way I can with your mission to pass on everything you've learned to others that resonates so highly with us, because that's what we're trying to do. So any way I can help, let me know. Any way I can be of service to you.
Keep improving. Keep your listenership growing, and keep becoming more successful. Makes me happy.
Absolutely.
If there was one blip you could give, 10-second blip, Dr. Robert Scott, to everyone listening right now, what would you give them? Little gem.
Pearl.
We are becoming. So if you think you're going to be a scientist, act like a scientist. If you think you're going to become a podcast host, act like that. We are, and what we are becoming.
We are becoming.
Love it.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this as much as we enjoyed recording, and we will talk to you later.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this episode where we were lucky enough to sit down in this very studio with the one and only Dr. Robert Scott. Up next, we are doing a 5-minute clinic where Alan and I sit down and we both share an impactful lesson that we learned at Your World Within Live 2K19.
Both of these stories are very nostalgic, powerful, and I think they will help you double down on your why power to chase whatever your dreams are. I hope you enjoy.
We both hope you enjoy, and we will talk to you on Monday.
Talk soon.
Bye.